We now return to CBB's coverage of the trial of the century. Former interns of the Quintilian Institute have sued the embattled director of the storied institution for alleged abuses of power and wrongful termination. And now, Mr. Director, would you mind explaining to the court what did happen that day? Well, of course I would mind. I still see it every time I close my eyes. But if I must, it was shortly after we allowed the junior staff to direct one of our press releases. You know, we thought it would be a good opportunity for them to see how things worked, to prepare them for eventual promotion. Well, as we've already established, it did not go well. And would you care to elaborate? Well, I was about to, if you could refrain from interrupting me. If it's a vivid description of an event you want, why, it's a pragmatographia you're going to get. I wasn't in the room at the time, but my secretary called me into the studio, and it was all chaos. Light fixtures hung from the wires, there were cameras crumbled somehow all over the floor, and the walls were dark with soot. It was all illuminated by the guttering glow of what remained of nearly everything else that had been in that room before. So of course I asked someone to call the interns back in and explain themselves to me. But then the report came back and said that they weren't coming in, that they didn't understand what the problem was, and that they were all off at something called a chain restaurant, enjoying some unknowable concoction known as jalapeno poppers. The senior researchers and custodial staff all had the day off because they had earned it, and that left me to roll up the sleeves of my lab coat and don some unsightly rubber gloves and start scrubbing. That was my institute. I had built it over the years of painstaking rediscoveries, and the interns had nearly leveled it in a day. Of course, we had to abandon that facility and relocate, and then those vandals had the audacity to think that they could show up again for work the next day. What choice could I have had but to terminate them? It was the costliest disaster in the Institute's history, and it could have been averted by a modicum of professional competence. No further questions. Counsel, you may cross-examine. Mr. Director, we have this email written by the chief plaintiffs in this case. Could you take a moment to read it, please? I'm guessing I don't get to say no, so why not? Well, thank you. That would be Exhibit 4348, please. Oh, great director, we, your humble interns, wish to request leave to leave work early on the 19th. We understand that your great wisdom normally requires us to work 18-hour days with one small break at 4 p.m. for our necessary nourishment. We mean no offense nor disloyalty, but it is Lucretia's birthday, and we would be ever so grateful to be allowed to celebrate it with her, as it is the last time we'll see each other before she returns to her hometown to care for her sick parents' failing farm. Again, we emphasize our willingness to work double hours the following week to compensate. We are daily honored to serve you and your institute without compensation, for we are but interns after all. But it would mean ever so much to us to be permitted to fraternize with our colleague before her departure to the agrarian wastes. With adoration, the interns. Now, in your professional opinion as director of the Quintilian Institute of Words about Words, how would you describe the rhetorical stance of the interns in this letter? Well, it appears to me to be a clear case of philophronesis that honestly is teetering on the brink of mewling drivel. If you could keep the commentary to a minimum and just answer the questions, please. Now, why do you think somebody would feel the need to produce such a philophronetic text as this? Well, in a typical context, philophronesis is an attempt to placate an enemy, to cool things off with a bunch of careful, gentle language. But like I just said, this verges on groveling. You don't really think anyone here is taking this seriously, do you? Again, Mr. Director, please just answer the questions. Well, under normal circumstances, you might think that the writer of such a text was afraid of the recipient and trying to avoid some kind of terrible consequences. Are you telling me that your interns were afraid of you, Mr. Director? You know, being such a terrible manager can come with awful consequences. Are you aware of the punishments that could be coming your way? Keep up this kind of management, Mr. Director, and I foresee a greater loss in your future than just your public image and a few $1 million. Are you threatening me? You know, making threats for retribution, Cataplexis as we know it at the Institute, rings hollow when your case is built on fabrications and lies. I really can't believe the court is going to tolerate this. I'll allow it. Of course you are. Mr. Director, have you no sense of empathy? Are you so void of human decency that you cannot be touched by the plight of beleaguered interns who want only to celebrate the birthday of a friend? Can you not see how your actions as director of this institute have left lives in ruin and dreams in shambles? What will it take for you to see what this court plainly sees, that we all see? When will you understand that it's not? Please, you've stopped asking me bona fide questions, and now you're just using these questions to get after me. If the judge is willing to tolerate your absurd epiplexis, your rebuking through rhetorical questions, well, then I can assure you that I will not. Mr. Director, if you attempt to derail these proceedings one more time, I will hold you in contempt. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, as I was saying, Mr. Director, your behavior is clearly documented in this series of letters. These false and fabricated lies, you mean? Your Honor! Mr. Director, I mean it. You will submit to questioning, or so help me, I... Stop! What is the meaning of this? This whole thing is a farce. Judge, jury, you're all being manipulated by that clownish orb. It was a long investigation, but I met a robot down by the docks and, well, it's a long story, but he shrunk himself down and attached himself to the end of this safety pin. He says that the energy stored in his alchemical reactor is enough to undo it all. And you expect any of us to believe any of that. So where did that letter from the interns come from, huh? What do you mean? We received it from an anonymous investigator. Amateurs, you never even confirmed whether or not those letters came from the Quintilian Institute servers, did you? Of course you didn't, because those letters couldn't have come from the Institute. This folder contains all the documents you'd need to confirm that the interns voluntarily resigned after nearly destroying the Institute. I also have signed confessions from your clients, suggesting that they are not, nor in fact were they ever employed by the Institute. They're phonies. The real interns have all found gainful employment elsewhere in fields more suited to their skill sets. Hold on. I do know what you're saying is true, but the way you're presenting it does strain credulity. Are you expecting us all to believe that you just happened to have all of this information and just happened to show up at the right time? I mean, I am grateful for your help, but must it come at the cost of narrative integrity? How did this happen? Well, I'm just a world-class detective. Now, take this. Huh. All right, so we're done here? Well, yeah, I guess so. There's really nothing else to see here, is there? Well, little robot, I don't normally let myself get attached, but we did go through a lot together these last few days. I don't really know how any of this is going to save your boss, or if he'll ever know what you gave up to rescue him. But I hope he finds out someday. You really were a brave little machine. So, he finally failed. I know, brothers of the Grand Council, it saddens us all to feel the disturbance of our colleague's failure. But we will seize the disgraced alchemist's power still, all in good time.